Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Shut Up and Do It podcast, the place you can come and hang out with us while we go through all things real estate with a focus on bringing you top quality topics and speakers, all who will live in a get it done manner. I'm your host, Nickell, creator of the complete deal flow system and a principal with AA Real Estate Group, along with my partner and co-host, the Esquire, Robbie Retzel. What's new, sir?
Not much, man. Just enjoying the rain around these parts.
It's a beautiful, beautiful day here in the Boston area.
Exactly.
I want to. Can you show leaves changing behind you, Rob, for all of our national listeners? Can you see it behind you?
Let's see. Can I do that? I think maybe.
Oh, beautiful, guys! Listen, if you're from New York, from California, from Florida, you don't need to leave your seats.
No.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty darn excited today. It's actually voting day too. Did you all vote? Everybody voted?
I got out there.
Of course.
Right.
The line started early.
Oh, brilliant. That's awesome. Guys, we are really, really excited to have our speaker here today. A lot of you might already know him. He's a member of one of our mastermind groups with us. And I'm going to obviously let him do his own bio and everything. But Robert Nickell, who's a specialist in VA services for real estate investors. And I'm just going to pass the torch right to you, Robert. This is going to be really hard for me today because we have two Robs and Roberts on. I don't really know what's going to happen. So I'll let you guys talk together. That might be the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, Robert, thanks for being with us, man. And feel free to take it away with a little bit about yourself and, the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate you guys having me. It's always fun meeting new people in the mastermind groups. It's by far the best way I've found to connect with high level operators and I love working with guys who are out in the fields getting it done, right? So it's great to always connect with new operators. So it's really exciting meeting you guys, and I appreciate your time and appreciate you having me on. My story, it's pretty simple. I started flipping houses back in 2008, 2009, doing one at a time, rehabbing with my best friend. And, we would do it all. We would from foundation to roof, if it needed a roof or needed some structural support, or we needed to run some Romex or put in some new insulation, whatever it was, we did it all. My best friend's dad was a general contractor. So I'd spend the summers working with him. And then, later in college and right out of college, we felt like real estate was the path for us to get out of our day jobs and our corporate jobs. And so I quit my job a couple years out of college and decided that I was going to go full time in real estate, thinking that it was going to be easy. And it was pretty terrible, to be honest with you, when I first got in, because what I did, my story was I made a couple Facebook posts because I had my realtor's license and I was flipping houses. And so I got a couple deals, did a couple transactions right away, and it felt really good. And it felt a lot easier than it was going to come to be because little did I know you have to market and get your phone to ring consistently and prospect. And then as your phones ring in, you have to run all the comps and then try to go meet with sellers. And then while I was meeting with sellers or trying to go on listing appointments, my phone was ringing in the car. And so I was able to do 2 to 3 deals a month.
Right.
My best month I could do like double that if it was like a package deal, if the seller had multiple properties to sell or something. But other than that, I was 2, 3, 4 transactions a month, working 60, 70 hours a week minimum to get that done. And I was doing everything, answering the phone, running comms, going on the appointments, building my buyers list, screening the buyers, showing all the properties for the wholesale deals, then trying to manage contractors on the rehabs. And it was awful. And so the way I found what I got into now was my broker, who I hung my license to be able to get MLS access because I pretty much was investing full time and not really using my realtor's license much. But my broker, he seemed to have a pretty good life and he seemed to have his office figured out. And I ended up spending a lot of time with him and spending a whole lot of time in his office and trying to learn from him and what he was doing. And he had 2 things in place that I really didn't have. One was he had really strong systems. He had his entire business mapped out end to end in some great scopes, which I had nothing. And the other thing was he was leveraging virtual assistants throughout the day to do the majority of the ancillary tasks. So even though it's for his brokerage, they were prospecting all the new leads. They were putting together the CMAs and property packets for their clients. They were then following up, doing all the acquisition and disposition management, working with title contract companies from contract to close. And I was like, that is my day. That is what I do all day long. And you've outsourced all of that. So that's where I got the idea. That's where I started learning about it. That was in 2011. And since then, I've turned it into what is now my full-time job, which is virtual assistants for real estate investors. So we have hundreds and hundreds of VAs in the Philippines that work for clients in every MSA across the country. Tons of guys in CG. I'd say a big percentage of our mastermind group use our VAs. And so today I'm all about helping people just put really strong systems in place and then create the leverage within their business to get where they're trying to go. Because we all have a little bit different goals, a little bit different aspirations. And my job is just to help people get there as efficiently as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Very, very cool. Robert, have you, on one of your deals, just curious, going way back on your rehab deals or multifamily or whatever, what was like the worst one ever? And what'd you learn from that?
Oh, I had a couple terrible ones, right? So everybody talks about the good ones. I've got a few terrible ones. One is I was post rehab and in a dual zone commercial and residential zone, and it was an awkward property with street maintenance that started right as about the time we were going to sell the house, and that house sat on the market for 18 months. And everyone loved it. The contractors got paid. The private lenders ate it up. It was good for everyone except for me. I lost well over 6 figures on that deal. That one just crushed me. So I think that was my biggest loss ever, was a deal that I thought was going to be a 6-figure plus win. Ended up being a 6-figure plus loss. It was actually $119,600 loss is what that one was, right? So that was the biggest swing I've ever had in expectations. So that one was very, very humbling. And then, man, I've had some rehabs where we started with budgets in the $30,000 range, and we pulled the sheetrock off the wall, and we got into the rehab and we turned into $50,000-$60,000 projects, and I'm scrambling, doing everything I can to break even on those things. And when we were breaking even on the HUDs, I was celebrating with the teams and high-fiving, because it's every now and then on those rehabs, it doesn't matter. You open up some walls and you get your teeth kicked in with some of the expectations that you had before and after. So I've definitely had a few where I've gotten my teeth kicked in.
Oh man. Thank you for sharing.
You learn from, though, right?
Oh my gosh, by far I learned the most through the good times. I don't really learn much through those. If I have a really smooth transaction, I'm not learning a whole lot on that one, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, the rehabs are great in that they really teach you a lot. It was just one thing for me that took me a while to really systemize and be able to process without having to have my butt in every single rehab all day long.
Gotcha, totally. We could use, honestly, this year, we have our systems down, Robert, but I'd say we would love a smooth deal, because we haven't had one in a while, and I forget what they feel like. So
that's how I hope for all of our clients, everybody we're working with, you have several smooth transactions, but it seems like they're getting harder and harder to come by.
You got it. Why don't you go into the transition so you obviously worked with your broker and you were like, oh my God, how is he getting everything done? He's got 18 hidden people helping him out on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So the first thing I did was I was doing direct mail for my marketing primarily. And then I did some other things like going to REIAs and the meetups and spent time at title company branches when they had their little events. And I did all of that, all the networking I could, but most of my paid marketing was direct mail. And so the first thing that I delegated was answering the phone. Leads are obviously the lifeblood of your business. It's everything. Without them, you don't have anything. Nothing else matters without some good motivated seller leads. But I was tired of answering the phone. And I was tired of, playing that game where you had to talk to so many people. And here in Dallas at the time, it was a lot of people, still is. You have to talk to a lot of people to get to a deal. And I was so sick of answering the phone. And so that was the first thing I got rid of. I was tired of going to bed feeling guilty. This is the honest truth. I was feeling guilty because I'm spending all this money on marketing and the phone's ringing and I'm like dreading answering it. And then what I was really doing, to be totally honest, is when I'm answering the phone, I'm only really chasing the motivated leads, right? So I wasn't grinding on the follow-up. I wasn't chasing the people I really should have been because I just didn't want to do it. So I just worked kind of the cream that was on the top.
Sure.
And then there's just so many hours, right? So I just kind of would work the cream. And then after that, that was a really freeing experience because I could spend most of my time building relationships, which then became my goal. It's like, hey, if I could just be sitting at the table with sellers all day, I could close a whole lot more deals. And so that's how I just kind of backed into the next thing, which was running comps. Most people freak out when we talk about running comps initially because the idea of the analysis behind the deal making is super important. It's obviously the foundation for all the decision making. It's very, very important. But for the most part, running comps is a checklist task, and it's done the same way every single time. And there is some nuance. There's some art to it, depending on the neighborhood and the type of property and how it works and where it is and all those things, right? There is some nuance. But once you get in the rhythm of running comps in the different neighborhoods and the different markets, it becomes pretty consistent. It's a checklist task. I got that off my plate next. And man, that's what allowed me to really start humming. All of a sudden, I loved wholesaling because if I could just meet with sellers and didn't have to run the comps and talk to anybody on the phone, I would show up at the properties and have my VAs have already talked to the sellers, and then the CMA packets and all the comps were already attached in my CRM. So if I meet with the seller, I would just have that information. And then from there, my confidence was just so full in the process, and I was really levered up at that time. We were able to do a whole lot more transaction. So that's when I went to disposition management. So everything from contract to close. I never got another email from a title company asking me for my corporate docs and the articles of organization and all the stuff that if they got the first email that they somehow lost or missed or whatever. That day-to-day interaction to get a deal closed, done, off my plate was what I got off next. And that was great because that for me was a mindset shift. Because at that time I was thinking, well, each phase was a huge paradigm shift for me. But at that time I was thinking that I had to do the title work management because if I wasn't doing it, I was like, that's the relationship there. And if I'm not carrying that relationship, then it's not going to work. Well, they didn't care as long as the deals were closing, whether they were talking to me or who they were talking to. They liked me, they liked talking to me, but they just wanted the transactions to close in their office. And other than that,
Sure.
The rest just was extra, right? And same way with taking leads. I was thinking, man, there's no way I could delegate or outsource taking leads. And then, they end up doing better than I do because they are dedicated to that process and they're incentivized by it. And they don't have all the emotional bull crap that I build up over time whenever I get sick of answering the phone, right? So that was really the process. My wholesale business became where 80 to 90% of it was completely done over the phone or on the computer overseas. And I had an acquisition guy hired to go into the field and manage the seller side. And then I had a part-time person to show the properties to the buyer leads. And then most of the contract side after the deals were closed there, because we would just cherry pick what we were going to rehab. Everything else we wholesale. And the rehabs were, we had a project manager process in place. So the day-to-day of the ancillary task of ordering materials and doing the checklist management was done in-house by our teams, but the rehabs were done, in fields by project managers. So that's how we centralized the business. I got a lot of leverage there. And what's really been fun, Nick, is then the last few years is helping other people figure out, where they're trying to go and then create a lot of efficiency and leverage points within their business. That's what's been really fun for me.
Crazy. That's awesome. Rob, do you have anything for him? Other Rob, Robbie R.
Robbie R. Yeah, no, it just sounds like you have, great systems. And then when you outsource what you're, that's what's not your highest revenue generating activities, you get a lot more freedom that way.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Awesome.
sorry.
Well said. I was just gonna say I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, and we have some students, and whenever we tell them, okay, you're at the point now where you need to start outsourcing some tasks, the biggest fear that they have is how am I going to train these people to do it as well as I can? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. That's like, a selfish plug here. That's why my business exists, because I went out looking for that. What I wanted was an easy button.
Yeah.
I wanted somebody that was pre-trained. If I needed an inside salesperson to work my sales leads or to manage buyers list or that, to have that type of task management, that type of profile, I wanted to just hire that person and then be able to get on the phone and not have to waste my leads and lose money for my business before they actually got it down.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't want to have to sit there and grind with somebody in the MLS and teach them how to use Zillow and teach them how to run comps.
Right.
And Robbie, that was my life for whenever I first was hiring VAs, right? Because whenever Wes was my broker who taught me how to do it, the way we did at the time was just it was Odesk and Elance at the time before they merged and became Upwork, and now they're going public and they're a platform everyone's familiar with. Back in the day, they were competing, and that was the main source to go get overseas labor. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was doing. I was hiring one at a time, training them myself, going through the brain damage, and it was awful. It really was awful. And I found some other companies who claimed to essentially have the easy button, and none of them really performed well. But the process that I found is like anybody can be successful. You mentioned systems. So my profile is I'm all go, I'm all gas, I'm out there. I need to be out in the field, right? So I am number one worst enemy to creating the scopes of work and the process of the system. Right. That's just not me. And so for me to take the time to map all that out was a losing battle. That was just losing effort. And so for me personally, what I did was surrounded myself with people who could draw that out of me. So I have team members who literally just sit there and ask me questions and pull out my day out of me. And then they map that out for me. And then they create the scopes and the training materials off of that. And so we all have systems and processes, even if we're solopreneurs. Most of the time it's just in our head, right? And I'm sure you guys experience that a lot. You just know how to do your job. You're not necessarily even thinking about it. You're just crushing your day because you know how to crush your day. The first step to me, in my opinion, is to take enough time just to stop and think about what you're doing all day. And once you think about what you're doing, you then think about, okay, what is highest and best use of my time? Where am I utilized the best? You mentioned revenue generating activities. I think that's always where we should be focused, right? But that's my opinion. We all need, as the business owner, to decide where best use of our time is. Right. And that's the first step in identifying some of the things that you can outsource and delegate. And then the systems process, you have to have something written down. There's got to be some kind of structure for someone else to learn from, or you're just going to be teaching them yourself, right, and going through the steps. So there's really two ways to do that. You can do it yourself. You can think about what you're doing all day long. You can kind of process map and mind map, just literally writing down the steps. Or you can find somebody who's highly detailed, highly structured that can help in that process. Or you can find someone like us, and that's essentially what we do for people on the front end, is mind map your entire business and create all those systems and processes for you so that when you do hire a VA, that person can be successful. So that is really, Robbie, why we created the business that we have now, is for businesses like yours and people who want an easy path to implementation, whether that's on the phone or general admin or running comps or building buyers lists, whatever it may be. The speed of implementation is so important. Yeah. And then having the structure and the teamwork around you to be able to create the scopes, create the processes. We want your business to be people-proof. It's run by people. People turn the knobs and pull the levers and do the work, right? People have to be there to do that. However, the process, your structure, the platform, if something happens to a person, a team member, the platform still needs to exist and operate at a high level. And so our goal is to work with people to create that foundation first, that structure, so that there's real platform to build off of. And then teamwork becomes possible, and the efficiencies there and the leverage points become really, really possible and exploitable at that time.
Nice. Robert, you just mentioned something really, really interesting, because, being so systems and checklists and processes oriented, you're absolutely, I 100% agree with you to take all those, as many as you can, right? Those basic, first administrative, and then if you can get into some of what your weaknesses are. In your case, you just didn't feel like you wanted to waste your time answering the phone anymore, right? As one of your first ones that you kind of went through. when is there a line drawn in the sand, if there is a line drawn, to where, we've also been hearing that real estate's not about sticks and bricks, and no matter how much we systemize it, at the end of the day, it's person to person, right? It's a people business at the end of the day. Like, is there a line that you draw in the sand for as far as when, you or one of your acquisitions people gets involved and has to be that personal connection?
Right, because this comes up all the time with your direct mail and your marketing, the autoresponders and the CRM you're using. I don't think there's anybody, unless I'm mistaken, but I've never talked to somebody who wouldn't just love an ATM sitting in their living room that they just press a button and push out money, right? And through automation.
I've got one of those. It's in the repair shop, though.
Right, yeah, that would be great. I would like one of those. But the idea of automation so much is in our minds, we would like to just do nothing, right? Is we create systems and processes and then it just all does it for us. I like to look at more of your crafting and experience, whether that's for your sellers or whether that's for your buyers or your relationships from your title companies or whether that's contractors. You still have an experience you've got to manage there. And it's a combination between systems, technology, and people. And where the line is totally dependent upon how you're structured, if I can cop out on that answer, right, Nick? But it's not a cop out in that, because we all run our businesses a little bit differently. If you're tracking your numbers at all, it's pretty hard to ignore where your true lever points are, right? If you're tracking how many calls are coming in per week, how many appointments you're going on, how many of those you're closing, your title work management, it's pretty simple to objectify what's going on from a data standpoint. So whenever you start making changes in your business, you ought to be able to identify immediately whether that's a net positive or net negative right out the gate. But for me, it was just making sure I've got to go make money. So how can I do more deals, right? How can I get that turn? It wasn't talking to title companies all day. As much as that was important, I couldn't do that. I had to be sitting with sellers. So how did I sit with sellers? I took everything else off my plate. And then the buyers piece, it's like, right? So it's like another thing would be people want to just totally give everything away, right? Like, let's hire a few people and then we don't ever have to deal with that at all. Right. Well, it can be an escalation channel as well, right? I just all of a sudden only talk to a few buyers instead of my entire buyers list, right? And when we would send out an email that was with the new property we were selling, I didn't have to be the one to answer the phone and answer all the questions that are listed in the PDF that no one read. That didn't have to be me. But when the guy was offering me $62,000 instead of $64,000, then I could step in and take on that negotiation. That was a thing, because it's a real thing instead of just, hey, what's your phone number and when can I come see the property? So for me, it's all about that experience where you're actually going to close the most deals and then kind of backing into it from there.
Awesomeness. That's great. And if I could go one more step too, and I love this, by the way, kind of some hard questions, Robert. In the business that you have now, where you have obviously an assortment, a huge labor pool that your team has trained and generated, right? And they have their own systems that they follow. That's accurate so far, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
We're customers of IVAS as well, so we should we kind of know the process.
Yeah, beautiful.
Correct. No, but as in your business, that what you have now, do you have your own systems and checklists? Like, the hard question is, are you also seeing, difficulty in, that's a labor pool for you, right? So you still have to motivate them. You have to hold them accountable. You have to kind of keep on the training side of them. And is there a challenge there on a month-to-month basis that you guys and your team has taken over that the investors that hire IVAS do not?
Yeah, so I love the question. I appreciate you setting me up there, Nick. That's awesome, right? Because the problem with people is that it's the day-to-day, right? When I very first hired someone, it was not a virtual assistant. It was not someone overseas. I had people in the office, and I would hire, to do my direct mail, to handwrite some of the envelopes and fold stuff and stamp, and then do some general administrative tasks. And I tried hiring part-time moms, and I tried hiring interns from college, and then I tried hiring full-time people that were at a competitive per hour scale. And for me, it was tough. And I'll blame some of that on inexperience, on just ignorance on my end, from management, from infrastructure, from all of that being new on a new platform. But also, I didn't really like having people in the office. And I didn't really care whenever somebody's kid got sick and they had to go pick them up from school. And we were trying to close title, right? Or, it's Friday at 3 and we got stuff going on and people want to be piecing out of the office early. Like I had a hard time with that, with motivating people all the time. And so one of the great things about having someone overseas, and for me in particular in the Philippines, which you guys have experienced, was that not having someone there in the office has way more positives than it does drawbacks, in my opinion. And part of that, Nick, before I specifically answer your question, is inherently motivating people that we're hiring from our talent pool. It's highly educated. It's a highly motivated workforce. So it's the motivation piece inherently is easier. If I can be crude and blunt about that, it's a lot more easier to motivate someone out of our pool than it is traditionally, in my opinion, hiring from the US, just from inherent motivational factors that make that job a little bit more important than it is here. The second thing is we are absolutely there to be with any of our clients from setup all the way through implementation. So we are not only mind mapping your business, like I mentioned at the beginning, but even more important, helping set up the accountability and the transparency of the day-to-day task management. And then as you guys know, we stay with you for the life of the account. So that mid-level management stays with you to help manage the VAs, make sure they're checking in, make sure they're performing well, end of day, start of day, and then also providing whatever resources you guys need. You mentioned checklist. If there's a checklist that you need that we don't have, I want to know about it, because we should. We should have pretty much any resource that people need to be able to implement and take action. And that's why I love the name of y'all's podcast, because that to me is what it's all about. It's just out there taking action and doing it. So I'm really glad you guys are having a great experience, and I'm glad we're providing the support that you guys deserve.
Cool. Robbie, do you have any further questions for him on that side of it?
On that side of it, can you just, I know you said you start with mind mapping the business. So if someone were to come to you and say, okay, look, I want to get started with IVAS, what does that look like? What are the first few steps?
Yeah, so the first thing we can do is we've got advisors that would love, the steps are pretty simple. You work with an advisor on the front end to make sure we really understand your business. We're not arrogant enough to think we can provide guidance to you without really understanding what's going on.
Sure.
So we're going to meet with an advisor who's an expert in systems and processes and technology and all the stuff to answer all your questions on the front end. From there, once we have good structure in place, then we're going to go find candidates that are pre-trained, that have already done, if you need somebody on the phone, we're going to find somebody who's taken thousands and thousands of calls before you're interviewing them. If you're going to talk general admin or working comps or running CMAs, you're going to get somebody who's done that for weeks and weeks and weeks. So the idea is to first mind map your business, create a job description based on that mind map, someone who's going to fill that role. Then we go find that person. They're already pre-trained. We're going to send you 3, 4, 5 resumes. And then we're going to help facilitate those interviews. And you'll be picking a team member, somebody who's going to be joining your team. So an advisor who would love to speak with anybody who's interested would be Mark. And it's just marc@rocketstation.com. So they can just email Mark directly at marc@rocketstation.com. And he'll get them set up. He'd love to have a conversation, even if it's just to generally talk about the business. They're not sure what a VA could do for them. People shouldn't hesitate to reach out. We're open to chat with anybody.
That's awesome. Cool. Hey, Robert, what's the best purchase you've made in the past year that has been under $50?
The best
that has helped you personally and professionally. I love catching them off guard. I love it.
I am a notebook guy. So my Moleskine, if it was a little bit closer, I'd grab it home and say Toy Story Moleskine. And I go front cover to back cover on that notebook. And then I put it on my shelf. And that's how I keep trying. Then periodically, when the quarter's over, I just scan through my notes that I've done throughout the entire quarter, and I use those moleskins throughout the day when I have what I think are my good ideas. And then later on they end up being terrible, but they're like my ideas my idea pad, it's like, and I think so the moleskins, I say, would be where something I spend too much money on for a notebook, but
that's great.
I also have a moleskin. I'll tell you guys, listen, I'm going to get everybody in on this idea I had at 3 a.m. I woke up and I wrote this one down. This is brilliant. I kept it ever since. Imagine what you could do if you could recover all of the tiny little bits of deodorant that are left over when you can't quite get there at the bottom of every single stick. You know what I mean? What if we could just shave all those off and make a new deodorant stick with all of them? That was one of my 3 a.m. ideas. You can all have it, whoever's listening, and run with that.
World changing.
Well,
World
changing. All right.
Welcome. You're all welcome. Hey, Robert, what's the best way that people can get a hold of you, check you out, and get a hold of you?
Yeah, go to rocketstation.com, check out some information there. We're going to have more and more resources being uploaded. So you're talking about scripts and things. So through the blog and the resources there, we're going to have tons of opportunities for people to download checklists and scripts and follow-up campaigns, anything people need. Check that out. And I'd love for them to email me directly, Rob, R-O-B, at rocketstation.com.
That is awesome.
Great.
Hey, dude, thank you so much for being on with us today. Man, we'll put some of those, what link, say the link again. We'll put that in the description too. Say it again.
Go to rocketstation.com. I'll put a page up, rocketstation.com/resources. I'll make sure there's some stuff there for people to download.
Oh, fabulous.
That's
Sweet,
great.
Robert. Well, thanks for having us on. Thanks for being on with us. And
you guys are awesome. Really appreciate the time. This is a lot of fun.
You got it. All right. That is it for today's Shut Up and Do It podcast. We will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.